Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time. And on today's podcast, we continue Chanuary with 1997's Mr. Nice Guy. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and joining me today to talk about this one is my regular co-host. He's a podcaster, he's a screenwriter, and he's a cacklingly evil martial arts master. It's Mr. Craig Draheim. Hey, Craig.
Hey, Scott. You keep this podcast so clean that I'm afraid to even fart in it.
And if you don't know, that's a line from the movie, which it's one of the weird lines that the mafia guys say. And the very convincing mafia guys that we have in this film.
Yes. That you only see kind of from a distance, and you never see talk except when they are complaining about how clean his house is.
Exactly. Now, for the audience, as you may have heard, this is actually going to be our penultimate episode. Yes, totally ignore the grand plans I unveiled in the Super Cop episode, as while you may think that these episodes were recorded a couple of weeks apart. Actually, no, they were recorded months apart, and in that time it became apparent that we could no longer do this podcast, as both me and Craig have other podcasts, and I have recently moved to the literal other side of the world from the UK to New Zealand, and trying to settle in here, and it's just become kind of untenable. So this is going to be our goodbye to the show, and unfortunately Craig won't be able to make it on the finale, so on the final episode, so this will be your last episode, Craig. So
I know, It is. I had a lot of fun with this show, and I'm hoping that we can kind of, at some time, sporadically chat more. But I had a lot of fun with this, talking mainly not great movie. I mean, I'd like to say that the good outweighed the bad, but now as I'm thinking of it in response, no, not at all.
We did cover some great ones, though. We did. Like some really good ones, like Mission Impossible and Ronin and Cop Land, and we did cover some really good films as well. And some that had like a lot of nostalgia for me, like Demolition Man and Under Siege and Cliffhanger, and like these. And some that I even didn't realize I had as much nostalgia for as I did. Maybe it's just because, I'm specifically thinking of Backdraft and Three Musketeers, but maybe it's just like Caleb's enthusiasm is rubs off on me, and I'm just like, oh, yes, I have more nostalgia for these movies than I thought I did. I remember.
He's a very, very positive person in it. I always felt, it almost feels like we needed him here for him because, there was always, anytime we wanted to talk crap about one of the movies, so he's like, I think he was still tried to be very positive about them.
His positivity is infectious because, each time, I went into, Three Musketeers or Batman Forever or whatever, and I had these points, I do have genuine nostalgia for those movies, but I think I probably would have teared them down a little bit more without him, but recording with him, I'm like, yeah, you're right, these are great.
Chris O'Dell isn't bad.
I wouldn't go that far. I never went that far. No, we heavily diverged on Chris O'Donnell. In fact, that might have been the one time where my negativity turned Caleb around, and he was like, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Chris O'Donnell. I really liked him as a kid, but I'm not sure now." Oh dear. I have to say, right, if you get to pick out one moment, if you go to pick out one moment or one episode, What would you pick as your favorite? Because I have mine, like, just because of the particular recording experience it was. I have mine, but I'll let you go first if you want.
Oh, geez. I'm not sure. I mean, each season, I think there was one, I almost want to say it was something from, I can't think. I had a lot of moments throughout that were great. I know, recording with Caleb those couple times, recording with Adam.
Yeah.
It was definitely, I want to say it was a Stallone movie. I know horrible as it was, us talking, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, going through that together was, I think it really helped bond us.
I think it really did. I think there's been certain ones where we've really had to lean on each other to like make it through to the very end. I think like, and I now can't remember the name of those screenwriters, but those two movies that were brought to us by the same screenwriters, Stop or My Mum Will Shoot, and
The Real McCoy, wasn't it?
The Real McCoy. We really had to kind of lift each other up and, drag each other through so I think those episodes really did bond us closer together for sure.
Yeah.
And, I have a lot of the same favorites. Like, we're doing the episodes with, I always enjoyed doing the episodes with Caleb. I always enjoyed doing the episodes, with, Adam as well, where we like, did our own, like, re-edit of, Copland.
Yeah.
And, we also, brainstormed our own kind of low budget knockoff version of Mission Impossible Disavowed.
Yes.
Which, hopefully we'll see production in both of those. I want our Copland mini-series and Disavowed to see production at some, but I think the crowning moment for me, the episode that, as much as the joy that those episodes gave me, possibly the episode that gave me the most joy, and just because of your confusion, I have to say, was the episode where we did On Deadly Ground.
Oh, my first Steven Seagal.
Your first episode, your first Steven Seagal episode, and Kyle and I had to describe the rules of Seagal to you throughout the episode, and you're like, does this often happen in Seagal movies? Yes, it happens all the time. Yeah. What about this? It's really weird. Yeah, and I know he's really weird. I don't know why he does it, but yes, this also often happens.
Yeah. Well, and it gave birth to there's a great, like, side character or villain that I just rather want to see that movie. Why can't we have that?
What? Oh, well, forget about Steven Seagal. Let's just make it all about, like,
Michael
Caine's evil oil tycoon. Why can't we have that film? This is following him.
Yeah.
Yes. So, it did start that trope as well. So that's, that makes it.
Yes.
One of the most entertaining episodes for me, I have to say. But yes, I liked your thinking, and that led to many other times where we either recut the movie or decided that the movie should all be about this one side character.
Yeah. Well, I know, probably our most efficient episode was I think Breakdown. That was the one out of all of them that we were just kind of saying there going, oh, we can't really make fun of. We can't really, it's just a very well, like, fast-paced movie.
Yeah. It's a tight movie, and there's not a lot of loose ends to it. There's not a lot of loose plot threads. There's not a lot of things you can kind of poke holes into. I mean, you can make a little bit, we kind of made a little bit of fun of, like, Kurt Russell being a normal guy and kind of turning into an action hero, but then he doesn't fully, and it was just like us kind of enjoying the movie and talking about the things we enjoyed in the movie, really. And then, and then that led to, because of Adam's connections, led to the one interview that we did on the podcast with director Jonathan Mostow, which was also fun for me. I enjoyed conducting that interview, even though time was kind of short on that interview, so it probably could have gone longer, but he didn't have like loads of time. He had another meeting to go to, it was still good, and I think that episode's it's still like 48 minutes or something, so it's still a decent interview. That was a lot of fun as well. And I think, it was just because of the structure of the movie that we just ended up being like, there's not a lot to kind of recut or there's not a lot to kind of, make. There's not a lot of kind of the typical action movie daftness. Which is the same cannot be said for today's movie.
Yes.
So we will now cut along to today's film, which, as I said at the start, is Mr. Nice Guy, which was released in Hong Kong on the 31st of January 1997. So when this episode goes out, it will just about be celebrating its 25th anniversary. It was directed by Sammo Hung, who also directed the likes of Wheels and Meals and the Lucky Star films, as well as a bunch of other stuff, and was written by Edward Tang, and Phaib Ma, both of whom co-wrote Rumble in the Bronx and Super Cop, and Edward Tang was also a writer on Project A 1 and 2, also a Police Story 1 and 2, as well as Super Cop, and so wrote quite a lot of Jackie Chan films. Critically, it is sitting at a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, 43% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 30 reviews. It doesn't have a Metacritic score, and it's got a 3.1 on Letterboxd. Also, I normally give kind of box office numbers for films, but it's harder to get box office numbers for these sorts of films, as opposed to kind of the Hollywood ones we often do. So I couldn't see what the box office was. I imagine it wasn't a massive hit. It's probably not one of Jackie's most known films, even though, because of the time I got into Jackie Chan films in the kind of mid-90s, it was one of those ones that I did have on VHS. So I seem to have kind of weird Jackie Chan films on VHS. It's did you have the classics like Police Story and Project A and Armor of God? No, I had First Strike and Jackie Chan's Who Am I? And this film. And Young Master. I just picked up whatever was available in the shops on VHS that was Jackie Chan, and that was often the ones that were available. It was quite often hard to get kind of Hong Kong action films before the kind of Hong Kong Legends DVDs kind of were a thing in the kind of early to mid 2000s. Although again, that was a short period as well. It was often not the easiest to pick up these kind of Hong Kong action movies that I like. And I know it's similar in talking to people in the States. I know it was similar, that it was kind of sporadic, and you would just have to pick up whatever random ones that did get a release.
Yeah. Yep. I had the same thing, I think, where, it wasn't the main ones. It was kind of all, the bargain bin, where it's, exactly. I guess now they still do it in the stores here, where it's they have the big bin of really cheap movies and you can just grab out. And so I had, a lot of the kind of lesser known Jackie Chan ones like that, is the same thing. And it was especially after, once Rush Hour came out, it's everybody tried to go, oh, well, Jackie Chan is this huge hit now. And so they just bombarded all the stores with older Jackie Chan movies, but of course not the big one. I think the only big one that you would find easily would be maybe Drunken Master, but
yes,
that was it.
That was the ones that were kind of regularly available of the kind of the bigger titles. I think Drunken Master and Rumble in the Bronx were like the two bigger titles that you could generally get. But yeah, there was a lot of the kind of what are seen as kind of Jackie Chan's classics, like the first two Police Stories, or like the Project A films, or things like Armor of God, stuff like that. They weren't easy to find.
Yeah.
But yes, this was one of the ones that you could often find in, because I was the same, it was often the things I could find in like bargain bins, and like, I know it's not a shop you would have in the US. It's a very UK shop, although I think it's closed down now. I think it's been closed down for ages actually. But there was a shop called Woolworths where you could get like kind of cheap videos and kind of bargain bins and stuff like that. And this is kind of one of those ones where you'd have some pocket money. The video would cost like £3 or something.
Yeah.
Which is like a couple of dollars, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's one of those ones. So I've seen this movie a few times. Although even as a kid, I didn't like this one as much as even some of the other ones, like, that are not seen as classics either, like First Strike or Who Am I? I didn't watch this as much as that, or even the likes of Russia. But I've definitely seen it a few times. Was this one you had on VHS or DVD?
I didn't have it on DVD. I can't remember. I know I had a bunch on VHS, and then I ended up renting. There was like this period where I went to the store, and you could get for, what was it? It was like for 7 days for $1 at Family Video, which was a video rental chain. And I would go and get a bunch of them, and so I know I've seen it, and I can't remember if I owned it or not now, but it's one that watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this scene, but they're just all, with the exception of a couple, they're all kind of a blur of just action scenes, because I know I haven't seen this one in probably 25 years or more now.
Yes. I mean, I've probably seen it closer than that. But I know that because, obviously I gave away most of my, all of my VHSs in the early 2000s. So I started buying DVDs in like 2003, which I know is later than a lot of people, but like, I'm kind of behind the times. It's probably been about 20 years since I'd seen this movie, although we originally scheduled this recording a few weeks back, so I've now seen it twice in twice in a month. So so after not seeing it in 20 years, I've now seen it twice in a month.
And now you'll never have to watch it again.
It's probably not a Jackie Chan. Like, when we did the Super Cop episode, when I did the Super Cop episode with Adam and Drew McWeeny, I was like, oh man, yeah, like, I want to watch more Jackie Chan again. Like, this is great, like, I'll probably be rewatching this one, like that. But, Mr. Nice Guy, not so much.
No, I was gonna say Super Cop was probably when I was a kid, was my most watched. I think, because I know that's the one I clearly remember, the VHS and all of that. And, besides that, well, not counting what would come later with like Rush Hour things, not counting his kind of big Hollywood hits. But yeah, and then Drunken Master, I think it was like, Super Cop, Drunken Master, and there's one more, but again, it's all blurred by now, of him injuring himself. Because there was a part of me that loved the seeing, maybe it was because of my love for film and all of that, but there was this fascination I had with the kind of blooper reel at the end of seeing him actually doing the stunts, and I was always very fascinated with that.
Yeah, I always loved the blooper reel at the end. There was something, yeah, kind of cool about getting a sneak peek into like the kind of behind the scenes of how those stunts are done or whatever, and just the insanity of it all, and like what Jackie Chan has put his body through for our entertainment.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
And you can find it on YouTube if you haven't watched it. I think we've already talked about it, Scott, but there's he was honored in China by, and there's this whole thing where he goes on stage in front of this huge crowd, and his stunt team is they're doing a little mini documentary that he's watching. And it's his old stunt team talking about working with Jackie Chan, and that they kind of called each other brother, and they're like one big family, and they worked together for all these years. And it's kind of in a happy way, it's kind of a weird tearjerker, because you're kind of seeing this bond that all of these men had going through all these movies and over the years. So I'd really it's probably about a 10-minute video, maybe less, but I'd definitely recommend watching it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, I mean, I suppose like, they did so many movies together, of course they were going to have this bond. And then like, like Jackie often worked with a lot of people that he grew up with as well.
Yeah.
Like doing the kind of the crazy training that he did, that he describes in his autobiography, My Life in Action, at the Peking Opera School. That also, like, Sammo Hung was another student there, Yun Bao was a student there. So many people came out of that school. And but like, yeah, the training that he describes is absolutely crazy. But obviously, it really bonded together these men, and for life,
Yeah. No, and it's I think so. I guess getting kind of into this movie, what I'll say, despite some before, because I'm going to have issues with it that will come up, but I will say that there is something about Jackie Chan that isn't just like, chalked up to Hollywood charisma, but he's just one of those people that seems like such and obviously pun intended, a genuinely nice guy. Like, anytime you hear him talk, when you watch these kind of bloopers, everything about it, and that could just be a public persona or whatever, but there's something about it that just feels genuine about that. He just loves doing it.
I think he genuinely loves people, and I think there is something genuine about it. I get the sense that it comes from the heart. It doesn't come from a place of, because, I think we've discussed a little bit before that, and I might be wrong, so I might be doing, him a disservice, but there is something about when you hear the stories about like Tom Cruise being like, so generous with his time with fans and stuff like that. There's something very Hollywood star about it. There's something that makes you feel like there's a little bit of kind of falsehood there, of like he's kind of perpetrating a public persona, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm genuinely doing Tom Cruise a disservice, and maybe it similarly does come from the heart, but there's something about it that makes it feel kind of fake. Whereas when I watch Jackie Chan, it doesn't feel fake at all.
Agreed.
So, maybe we should cut into the movie now. We've probably talked around the film enough and reminisced about the podcast enough. We'll get into it. So, it turns out that I had watched a different cut of the movie than you have. You've watched the kind of American re-edit of the movie. There, again, like we discussed, what I discussed with Drew and Adam in previous episodes, that there was two different versions. There was an American studio re-edit of that movie as well. Although I think we all watched the same one in that episode. But we watched two different ones in this episode. So how did your movie start?
So, Mr. Nice Guy starts with the character of Jackie, played by Jackie Chan, he's basically on a cooking show in Melbourne, Australia. And yeah, he has this big thing of dough that he's slapping against the counter, and the live audience is oohing and eyeing as his kind of partner, or his cooking partner / mentor he's basically the one doing all the talking and presenting, and like, oh, look how good Jackie is with it. Ladies, he will be able to do that to your hair later, as he's like spinning the dough, and they're obviously having fun. And then the dough finally gets cut and everything, and he turns it into, within this short amount of time, into this beautiful looking pasta. And then it's almost like a sitcom or something where it like freezes on him. And then it says, Mr. Nice Guy. And that's the very opening. And then, then it transitions to this, basically a drug transaction.
A drug transaction, that's what.
Yes.
Between two gangs.
Yes. The demons and the mob. I don't think the other one has necessarily they don't have a
title. They don't even have like a kind of family name or anything. They're not Corleones or anything like that, are they?
No. And what we kind of learn is that the demons, they're more of like a street gang. They're not and they stole the cocaine from kind of this mob and are now selling it back to them.
That is correct. So they're kind of like sub-warriors, like that's
yes.
kind of what we're at. So my movie opens differently, right? And it's probably fine. Your movie doesn't, your cut of the movie doesn't open this way. Basically, I think the American kind of studio re-edit, they wanted to kind of lean on the comedy. And make it like purely an action comedy, keep it light. And most of the movie is light, and I can kind of understand the reason they made some of the cuts they did, because some of the things that happened in the original Sammo Hung edit is tonally quite jarring. So basically, the movie opens in the original version, the Sammo Hung original version, I should mention as well that I did it right at the start of my notes. I just wrote, love seeing the golden harvest sign. So I was just like, that's always a sign of excitement from my childhood, I think. I just have a real nostalgia for just seeing that golden harvest thing come up and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch a Hong Kong action movie. It's going to be great. So like basically, it opens with an establishing shot with very, typical 90s action movie guitar kind of, like at a villain's lair, like sinister guitar. And we open at Giancarlo's villain's lair, and basically there is a woman in a pool. And then...
Oh, yes.
So there's a woman in the pool, and then he basically drowns the woman in the pool. It doesn't kill her, but the woman is apparently one of the demons and has sold them out or something, or has been given information to the demons. And so he basically drowns her for a little bit, and then tosses her to his men. Kind of roughs her up a bit, then tosses her to his men, and then says, take her to the guest house. And the guest house is like this kind of quarry where basically she's thrown into a big pit, and the big pit is then filled up. And it's quite unpleasant, and, as we often have to do on this podcast, when we look back at these 90s action films, we often have to talk about the problematic elements of these films. And one of the problematic things about this film is as much as I do enjoy Sammo Hung as a screen presence, his movies are often have these kind of weird misogynistic moments in them. Like, it's uncomfortable. Like for some reason, the violence towards women in this movie is just that little bit more leering, just that little bit more nasty than the violence that happens to anybody else. We really lean in on the violence, and that's perpetrated against the females in this film. And it's really quite uncomfortable. And so this opening scene, really quite uncomfortable. And then quite tonally jarring as we cut into the holly jolly cooking show scene that you described. Straight afterwards, after watching a woman pleading for her life with a bloody face in this pit that's being filled up with dirt. It's quite...
So I remember that yes, I do I did have that scene. So we do, but so I made the mistake of that. It didn't go right into the drug transaction. It flipped. So, mine opened with as I said before, the cooking show, but then it goes into the pit scene.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So our scenes those scenes flipped, I guess. But it's still just as jarring to go from, the opening with like this friendly cooking thing and then into a woman getting, drowned and then thrown into a pit, spitting blood out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite nasty. And again, there's a bunch of moments throughout the movie that, just feel unnecessary, you're just like, why, Sammo? Why are you doing this stuff? Because most of it is lighthearted, but then you just get these kind of, like really nasty moments of violence. And the nastiest moments of violence are always towards the women of this movie. Which is, and having seen some other Sammo Hung movies, a recurring trope, a disturbing recurring trope of Sammo Hung's filmography as a director.
Yes. Well, and so the movie, I know I'm jumping ahead and we're going to kind of jump around, but there's parts where like it talks about him being a cop, or not being, staying safe and being a cook instead of a cop. And then it goes into this whole thing where, was it Baggio? Baggio. He's like, well, as long as I'm alive, he'll always be safe. And there's kind of it sprinkles all these potential elements that you're like, well, are they going to kill him? Or, that it almost, it feels like there was a darker initial script or something, because there's a lot of hints that make it darker. But I mean, there is, as we, I guess the trigger warnings of it, there's the almost attempted rape sequence where the guy is like, one of the demons is kissing all over, Jackie's girlfriend. There's,
Mickey.
Mickey. And, then there's a bunch of parts where Diana's getting beaten up and it's just all over the place with that.
Yeah. And there's that part as well where, right towards the end, where Giancarlo, is going, Jackie, like mocking Mickey and slapping her each time he said Jackie. And it just seems to be going on for minutes. And you're just like, alright, jeez, this is a bit much. It's a bit over the top, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's great, because that must be another cut, because he only hits her one, I think with mine, he does the mocking, but then he doesn't, he smacks her one, or whatever.
Oh, yeah, no, the cut I watched, he smacks her like 3 or 4 times.
Oh,
like back and forth, like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, mine was very, toned down, or watered down, I guess, in some instances.
Some instances. Oh, yeah. I don't know why they thought that, particularly, that just flipping the order of those opening scenes was going to like make it less tonally jarring. Or,
Yeah.
you know, like, that was the studio's thought of like, yeah, it's going to be more comedic if we start with the lighthearted thing and then go into that, than like go from not lighthearted to lighthearted to not lighthearted.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So then I think we both get the drug kind of transaction thing where he's trying to get back his stolen cocaine.
Yes.
And
We both get that.
yes.
And then it basically, you know, like in all these movies, it all goes wrong, and then somebody shoots out an air vent which reveals that two journalists are recording this this meeting, and then
Yes.
everybody chases after the two journalists. The cameraman is presumed dead as he gets shot, and the presenter, who is one of our main characters, Diana, she manages to escape, and this is how Jackie kind of comes into the plot, and then basically the rest of the movie is just action sequences, and
Yes.
we kind of pretend that we have a plot about the gangs trying to find the tape or whatever, even though, like, actually Giancarlo later on in the film seems like he doesn't care about the tape anymore. He just gets fed up of it. It was just being like, yeah. Anyway, we'll describe that later.
Well, it's crazy. So this whole layer sequence is that, there's like, grenades going off, they're shooting, and yeah, throughout all this, they have the time to be like, oh, there's two people up there, you know, take a moment. But, what's funny about the tape that I know gets into more is, so they're up in this vent filming it, and then when you see the tape played later on, it's like from multiple angles. And you're like, wait, how do you get like all these close-ups on different sides? And
yes.
you got all this editing and stuff.
That is one of the hilarious things about the movie, yes, indeed. It's just like, it's not shot from a single point of view. It is just literally the scene that we watched from the movie in slightly shittier quality.
Yes. And so, yeah, that whole sequence, I don't know. So it goes into that part, and then she basically, which I'm surprised, so the presumed dead cameraman is shot directly in the back, which, you know, makes it even harder when he pops back up again. Spoiler alert. But yeah, then it gets into part of the problem I had with Diana's character is she almost treats every little element throughout of hospitality that Jackie really, just because he's a nice guy, puts his neck out for her and saves her and does all this. And it's almost like anytime she's apologizing for it, it's the same level of emotion that, like, if I accidentally drank your soda or something, Scott, we're like, oh yeah, sorry, I have these gangs after you and, you know, threatening to kill you now. You know, that's like the amount that it's given.
Yeah. No, that is true. It's kind of the amount of like, you know, accidentally like spilling your tea or something like that, and it'd be like, oh, sorry, I'll get you a new tea. It's okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I get any on your trousers? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But like, that's about it. Not kind of like, oh my God, like, I know I've got you into this life-threatening situation, but can you help this get through this? You definitely think there'd be more. Basically, you just think you'd be more.
Yeah. Well, and then even when you see her throughout, you're kind of, and this, we'll talk more about this later, but she's just ungrateful in that sense too, in terms of even her thank yous. She's kind of like a selfish character. I don't know. It doesn't even really seem like she wants to do it for the big story to take down this, you know, drug kingpin. It's just more, she like wants the the fame of having a hot story or something. There's kind of an ego with her about it throughout. Like it never seems to change.
Oh no, I think it's very much just like she wants to become top newswoman. I think that's what it's really about, not really, and to be kind of fronting some big news program in Australia.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily about truth and justice.
Yes, because even after her cameraman, who you'd think she has this strong relationship with or whatever, her partner, he's shot, she doesn't even really pay it that much mind. Like it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen in action movies quite a lot,
Yes,
where like a character like dies and the character left mourns them for like 2 seconds and then it'd be like, oh well, anyway, action.
Yeah. So she's running away and they're chasing after her, and then she bumps into Jackie, who's walking with his groceries, and they grab her, the mob, and they're basically going to take her down. But then, since Jackie is a nice guy, he intervenes and he starts, this is where the blur now officially begins he starts fighting them, and then they're just kind of running around through cars and, with garbages and everything else, just fighting. Or, fighting a couple of them, running, fighting a couple of them, running, jumping in the car, driving around, and that's,
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think one of my favorite bits is in this action sequence there's a couple of really good bits. One where he crashes a mass wedding, which is like a like weird biker wedding where there's all these biker couples being married at the same time. And he grabs onto a gorilla balloon, and basically one of the bad guys shoots through the balloon, and he crashes through a wedding cake in slow motion. That's real fun. And possibly the highlight for me, though, is a really kind of stupid throwaway bit where there is a guy in an ice cream van.
Yes.
That Jackie hides in the ice cream van. And he talks in Mandarin, which was not subtitled in the version I watched on YouTube. Sort it out, YouTube. What are you doing? So the guy in the ice cream van thinks that Jackie is just playing hide and seek for some reason, grown up hide and seek. The villains come up and they're like, have you seen a Chinese guy? And the ice cream man's like, I'm a Chinese guy. And they're like, no, another Chinese guy. And he's like, what, this guy? And then he's like, and then basically the villains storm his ice cream van, and he's like, shit, I didn't, my bad. I thought it was just fun and games. I didn't realize it was a life-threatening situation.
Yeah. So with it's subtitled, Jackie just yells at him. It's like, why would you do that? And then he says, I thought you were playing hide and seek. And so he runs. And then it's funny because the ice cream man is all upset. It's like, oh, do you want an ice cream cone, to one of the mobsters? And then he just gets hit in the face. There's a lot of sequences where it seems like people just get randomly punched in the face. And this will come out later. There's a whole cyclists.
All right, yes.
Sequence, yes. That's supposed to play for comedic effect.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that later, because that's a lot of fun as well. But yes, so basically, what went down is, even without the subtitles, I could see that the guy was in the mistaken belief that he was playing hide and seek. And not, so that's not too bad, that one, I guess. Yeah. But that was some of the most fun highlights from that action sequence. And then basically we get back into the kind of more problematic aspects of the film of just obviously, basically Jackie gets back to the place with his co-host and is telling them about the tale. And Diana goes back to her place to watch the tape, although she does the oddest thing where basically she is about to put the tape in, but then decides that she wants a shower, which is fair enough. You can have a shower. But then she decides to not have the shower or watch the tape before the shower and is just randomly watching the tape in her lingerie for no reason other than Sammo Hung wanted this actress in her lingerie.
Well, I'll say, I know every time my life is threatened by, a giant gang of people, that the first thing I want to do is get in my underpants. And then just lounge around the house.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's not even the worst part because, the scene afterwards where she, gets captured and stuff and then escapes, there is a ludicrous slow-mo shot of her running in her lingerie where it's just this is really getting quite pervy now.
Yeah, because, so her whole way of escape, Richard, her cameraman, knocks on the door, who's been shot in the back, but apparently he can, walk around and whatever. And she opens the door for him and they bust in. She's like, I don't have the tape. Obviously the guy that just saved her life with no reason whatsoever, she just, spills it. Who it is. Very simple, but then Richard is kicked in the face, which I guess is dead from that, we're assuming.
He's never seen again, so he's now presumed dead. Yes, that was the final blow that put him over the edge. That was it.
But, so they're walking her down the street without shoes, or she just has the coat in her lingerie. And so she bumps into a guy and then starts to try and get away. She's saying that she tries to make a scene. The guy was trying to feel her up. And even the mobsters are like, you're okay, man. Just keep walking. She's just, they know she's trying to make a scene. And then she turns around and then pretends to be a prostitute within this cafe, and then starts to show herself undressed, and everybody's whistling and cheering.
Yeah. And
then she uses that to then smash a tray into their face and then run off down the street. Yeah, shoeless, just in her lingerie. And
then she manages to make that escape and avoid the gangsters. Although that is quite funny, when she pretends to be a mannequin in a store. Again, there is little side scenes that it would have been quite fun to see. What did she tell those two women? Before she who secured her away in the store and dressed her up as the mannequin kind of thing, that kind of scene could have been quite entertaining. Of what was that conversation like? There's these gangsters coming for me.
Then the mannequin is nude basically, so she has you see the mannequin breasts that she's wearing over herself or something.
Yes, it's a kind of rubber thing of it's basically she's got a kind of furry scarf on, and then kind of boobs and a torso. It's good. Yeah.
But I mean, I will say, so as much of a blur as this is in the plot, that there are a lot of great. I mean, with any Jackie Chan movies, there's a lot of great action sequences, and I'll give it that. It is entertaining to watch in that sense. It's just once the kind of any sort of plot elements or character stuff is where it takes a little bit of a nosedive.
Yeah, absolutely. The script for this isn't good. The plot is, basically, you don't have to have a complicated plot for an action movie. In fact, sometimes it's best to have like a more streamlined plot, and that's kind of what we talked about last time in the Super Cop episode about, you can, Drew was saying that you can have like complicated action or you can have a complicated plot, but you can't have both. And I agreed with him on that. So it is good to have like a relatively simple plot in an action movie of this sort. However, even by the standards of like martial arts cinema, even by the standards of like Jackie Chan films, like this is not just a simplistic plot. This is barely held together by sticky back plastic. Like there is there is really very, very little to this other than the action sequences. Luckily, there is a bunch of good action sequences throughout the movie, which does make it watchable. But talking about the kind of characters and the character relationships, you talked a little bit about Diana's selfishness. So like throughout the movie, Jackie is presented as, wait for it, a nice guy. It's called Mr. Nice Guy, and he is a nice guy. However, he does have a slightly toxic relationship with his assistant, Lakeisha, who clearly has a crush on him, and Jackie seems to know this, and he kind of plays on it, because there's two big moments. One that happens here where he's like, oh, can you, basically my car's been totally shot up, can you take me to the airport? And also like when they're offered later on in the movie, they're offered police protection, and Jackie's like, oh no, we can stay at Lakeisha's place. Like, so they clearly have a relatively toxic relationship.
Well, yeah, and it even gets to like Lakeisha making comments about with Jackie's girlfriend, Mickey, who they don't really know each other that well, and she kind of seems to have some little judgment on that, but then that goes away. And then there's the whole section where Jackie is just washing the dishes later on when they're staying at Lakeisha's, and he asks Lakeisha to scratch his back, so he takes off his shirt, and then she's scratching, but it almost turns into her like tickling him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems more than just like friends or whatever. Asking a friend to scratch your back or whatever, like it feels very, as you were saying, toxic in that sense. And Mickey even comes in. He's like, oh no, we're just friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like there's just these odd moments throughout the movie that you're like, Jackie, it feels like you're taking advantage of this woman and her clear love for you.
Yeah, especially that she's so willing to help him out too throughout this whole process, probably more than any other character.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, like, after, like, basically 2 seconds of more plot, we get, like, the next big action fight sequence at the mall. And before we kind of go into the action fight sequence, there's a little moment in this scene that I found really entertaining, because it was just like, clearly there's certain lines that even criminals won't cross, because there is a moment in the mall where one of the demons is about to drop grenades on like the crowd that are watching Jackie and Baggio cook, and
at a
like,
charity event.
The female leader, Sandy, basically stops him because she's kind of taking control of the gang, because the initial gang leader was killed in the initial drug deal. She just kind of like puts her hand out and is like, no, there's too many innocents. And it's like, oh, all right, okay. Clearly the criminal code of ethics there.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's because later on she'll have another part where it seems like she has her little code that maybe some of her gang doesn't share either, when she threatens to stab one of her own crew that is, trying to force himself upon Mickey.
Yeah, that is true. That is true, because she like beats him up and then like threatens to basically slice his nuts off if he does anything like that again. So like, yeah. Good for her.
Yeah. But I will say that the 2 seconds of plot are basically, in a nutshell, that they have a nice dinner with his mentor / father figure, and then Romeo, who is the son of his mentor, and the kids, Romeo's kids are the ones who actually get a hold of the tape, and they put it in their backpack and take it with them. And so that's the main plot. That's all the plot you really need out of that whole sequence.
Yeah, that's the whole of the plot you need there, and then the other 2 seconds of plot that we've already described with what happened, what went down at Diana's flat. And yeah, we basically, we get more action, and I think probably the most fun in this action sequence is, other than like the most entertaining moment, non-Jackie moment, is probably when Baggio is trying to keep calming people down and then just keeps getting punched in the face. Like in this kind of comical way, and then he has these like bright comical black eyes immediately. And I think the most entertaining Jackie moment is like when he's like jumping the escalators and like sliding down the escalators. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. There is so it's not a fighting sequence, but at the beginning of the charity event too, he's doing like that, where he has a little bit of the food on a spatula or whatever, and he's tossing it, he's flipping it into people's mouths in a distance. And to Mickey, who's his girlfriend or soon to be fiance, she raises her hand and he says, "Hope you don't get egg on your face." And he does it, and purposefully, as part of the joke of it, he hits her in the face with egg. But, which I guess is a fun thing to do too. Your fiance in public. But then, but as he's throwing it to another woman, the guy, one of the head bodyguards of the mob, jump in and grab it. And so he throws another thing of food, but it's a hot pepper. And that's another the comical aspects of it. So then this big macho man is then chewing, this hot pepper, and then, obviously realizes it's a pepper.
Yeah, that's a pretty good moment. And he's like one of the kind of goons, henchmen that kind of sticks out because he has like that kind of bleach blonde hair that makes him kind of stand out. But yeah, and then like we're still like in the action sequence, we're out in the wall, but then there's a big moment on a horse and carriage, and we're fighting bad guys on this horse and carriage, and there's some fun use of slow-mo in this, where like Jackie and one of the bad guys, one of the henchmen, like fly off the carriage in slow-mo into like a fruit stand,
Oh yeah. What's fun with this whole sequence is it pops up later on, is that I started realizing how many times the film is sped up, where it's like, where Mickey flies off the horse finally, and then like, oh, is Jackie now the Flash? Because like it shows the film speed up, and he's like sprinting quickly down this whole whole courtyard to then jump in the air and catch Mickey before she hits the ground, even though he was nowhere near her in this amount. Yeah,
because we'd just seen him like fly off the carriage, with this gun and stuff. I love how she's thrown from the carriage, because it's filmed weird in that. Like, the carriage crashes into, like, a car.
Yeah.
And she isn't, like, initially thrown. Like, there's like a pause, and she's not, like, thrown, like, directly straight off. It's like she's on, like, a launching pad. Like, there's a pause, and then she just flies into the air.
Yeah, it seems so. so the horses are able to detach and jump from off the carriage, and the metal bar to kind of hold the horses stabs through the car. But then, the carriage flips instead of smash it or something. Like, I don't think that's how the physics of that would work.
I don't think so at all. But it's how it works in this film.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. It's just, cause I watched it a couple of times and I was like, what? How does that work? She's just like, it's like it's like she's like, there's like a launching pad there and somebody's hit a button that's just like, she's shot off up into the air instead of like straight through. Like, I don't know. You could spend all day trying to figure these things out.
Yes.
But I won't.
But it has, the fun, because that also has the sequence where they're going underneath, they're on the sidewalk and while the carriage is going and he's ducking under signs and people are some of the bad guys are being hit by the signs and stuff like that. But
that's absolutely true. So that's pretty fun. I like all those kind of things, like where people like walk into signs or that kind of thing, that style of slapstick comedy. So that's always entertaining. But it actually looks way scarier in the bloopers, where Jackie's like head's nearly taken off by one of the signs, and you're like, oh geez, I'm just laughing here, and Jackie's once again risking his life for us.
Because the blooper shows like the top of his head get hit by one, and then he starts rubbing it really fast, and you're like, man. That thing must have. I mean, that even like the table saw blooper where he rolls over the table saw as it's going.
Oh yeah,
and it shows him practicing of that. I was like, oh, why would you even do that?
And it shows you how close it is, how close it gets to his crotch, and the face he makes of just being like, geez, I nearly lost something there today. Yeah. And you're like, why? Why would you even like?
Why would you even be like, way.
Yeah, this is the plan. I'll try this and not lose my nuts. Thankfully. Nothing happened, but it was, Jackie Chan is something else, man. He is just...
So he saves Mickey, and then after that, I can't even think, do we get another 2 seconds of plot?
We get another 2 seconds of plot. Yes. Basically, Diana goes to Jackie's to try and find the tape, and then Lakeisha, who I presume must have a key, again, their relationship, lots of questions. She realizes somebody else is in the flat that shouldn't be there, and basically picks up a cricket bat and is attacking Diana, and then Jackie comes back and it's kind of explained who Diana is, and then of course we have to make assertions towards Diana, because she basically says that she'll do anything for the tape, which is you can see where that gag goes. And then that's basically our 2 seconds of plot again. And then basically Diana's like, okay, I'll leave you alone. And then she walks out the door and sees gangsters coming. And then she's like, actually, I'm sorry, this is the only place I can come back to. Gangsters are coming. Can you please save my life again? And Jackie's like, I guess, now that they're here, I suppose, let's run to the roof. And that's, and it's interesting as well, because the demons throw grenades into the apartment, and the gang leader apparently has no issue this time, despite the fact that blowing up one apartment is going to affect the rest of the building. So innocent people could also possibly die in this situation, but because she's not seeing the crowd of innocent people, that apparently makes a difference.
Yeah, that's what I assume. It's, you know, the
She
ignorance
actually
is
physically
worse.
has to see them. Like, if they're not in the same space, then her ethics don't, like, kick into gear.
Yeah, that was the hard. I mean, she should have just the first time, you know, put her hand over her face, her eyes, and then.
Yeah. If she can't see them, they're not there. That's it. It's just like, oh, it's not good to do. Actually, wait, if I just cover it, but maybe she still has the memory of seeing them, so maybe that doesn't work either. Maybe if she even gets a glimpse of them, like, that's how that works. That she's like, ethics kick in. But then if it's just like, she doesn't have the forethought to think about, blowing up one apartment might affect the structure of this building and might cause a bigger fire, which might kill everybody in here. No, she doesn't have any forethought. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. What I started to think about this scene too, which I know this is the character that he is a nice guy, but especially from a script perspective, you almost want the arc or something, because they literally smash up his whole apartment in trying to, while they're fighting each other, Diana, Lakeisha, and he's saying it, well, you're smashing up my apartment, and then she kind of explains herself, and he just kind of goes, oh, that's okay. And you're looking at the apartment, they broke everything. It doesn't even like, oh, they broke one vase. It's just everything in your apartment's destroyed now.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, that scene, because he's really angry about that for 2 seconds, and then 2 seconds later he's like, oh, it's just a vase. It's just a spot. It's fine. And he's totally cool with it. 2 seconds later, after being really mad maybe he just needed to get out of his system. Maybe he's just I'm going to be really angry. I just need to rant right now. And once I've ranted, I'll be totally fine that all of my stuff is broken.
Yeah. I think that must be it. So they jump across, they walk across to the next building, and, obviously his apartment blows up as he's going, but he's able to get across to the building still, and that's where they're also running away again, but now it's him and the 3 women. I think, isn't this where Mickey gets taken? I want to say, finally. Where she's taken the first time.
Where she's kidnapped by the demons.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
No, because they get back. No, because there is more 2 seconds of plot where they're offered police protection.
Yes.
And then, as I said, Jackie's like, no, Lakeisha will put us up. And Lakeisha's like, will I? And Jackie's like, yeah, you will. And she's like, yeah, I will, Jackie. And then, so that's that. And then we have the whole, we don't really need to get into that sequence in the apartment. Nothing really happens towards the plot. Mickey and Lakeisha don't get on. Jackie and Mickey have a loving chat. Things happen. And then basically in that sequence, the demons kidnap Mickey.
Yeah, they break in, and then they give Jackie the phone and saying, we'll call you in 12 hours, because they know that Jackie, even though he doesn't have the videotape, they think he does, and they're saying, we want that videotape because it incriminates us as well. And so they take Mickey, and then Jackie gets his friend Baggio's son Romeo to help out with the police force, and the police there's a lot of them, actually. I'm surprised how many there are, but they're also very useless in terms of how to tail a person or how to be inconspicuous.
You're right, indeed. They are extremely inconspicuous in the fact that there is about a dozen of them. Usually, in most films, you see maybe there's a couple of people tailing the person who they want to get to, who's been told to get to a meeting spot by a group of gangsters. But there's about a dozen of them, and they stay roughly like a meter behind Jackie.
Yes. And it gets spoiled because he says, you need to back away from me. And then the head of the demons is walking by in disguise, and she hears that, he's being followed by cops, who obviously all look like cops. It's a whole group of men in, beige suits and sunglasses and,
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolutely ridiculous sequence. I don't know. I mean, and it's weird because it's almost like it's not being played for laughs, but it is extremely stupid. But if it was just a gag, that's quite funny. But it's kind of a weird sequence in that way where it's tonally it's not seeming like it's being played for laughs, because it seems like this is one of the few moments that, even though it is an action comedy and there's lots of comedy in it, that we're supposed to be taken slightly more seriously, because we're supposed to really care about the endangerment of Mickey.
Yeah, which I don't know, it almost I agree completely, because the way it's done, you would think, because I'm a big fan of Stephen Chow, and think that would fit in one of his kind of comedy, where if it was played even more so into the farce realm, like one of his movies, it makes perfect sense. But
here it just seems kind of weird.
Yeah,
I mean, kind of fun, because it is funny. It is but the way it's played is kind of strange. But then it's okay, because we can immediately distract ourselves with more action and more Jackie Chan being an absolute madman as he jumps from a bridge onto a bit of scaffolding to go to another the other side of the bridge, basically. It is some leap, a leap that he doesn't make, as you can see in the outtakes. But or it doesn't make on the first take anyway. So it's a pretty crazy leap.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and because in the outtake he does this flip thing and just hits right into the water below.
Yeah. Luckily, he's taken out the water pretty quickly, so that's...
Yeah, but then he's able to... He chases kind of the group on foot for a bit, but he ends up coming up with just basically onto the street. And this is supposed to be, the kind of big emotional moment in a way, where he's confronting the police officer, the police chief or whoever, and...
Captain Armstrong, I think his name is.
Yes. Yeah. And he's telling them that they were too close and they looked like cops, and that he's just going to do this on his own and to stay away from him. And that's kind of the big emotional moment, I guess, potentially.
I guess so. Despite the fact that, it doesn't really come through, because again, it's all kind of done so comically. And Captain Armstrong's a weird character, where he's kind of part bumbling incompetent, part the stereotypical angry police captain that you get in every action movie. He's always threatening to take people off the case and stuff like that. And so again, I can't quite get a read on his character and how seriously or not seriously we're supposed to take his character, to be perfectly honest.
Yes. Yeah, I know, because I don't know.
I suppose a lot of the things in this movie don't really quite add up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of my explanations here are just with this one, are just throwing my hands up. I don't know, something.
Anyway,
something on there. Yeah.
Because not long after that, we get another fight as Jackie is kidnapped and thrown in a van. And then he's fighting some of the demons in the van. And I think the most entertaining thing about this is like Sammo Hung's cameo.
Yes.
So we need to describe Sammo Hung's cameo. Now, there's a bit where Sammo Hung is a cyclist, and he basically rides up to the van that Jackie has been kidnapped in and is fighting the bad guys. And basically, he rides up to the van, he gives a little nosy, he asks kind of, well, what's going on? And then he gets punched in the face. And in any normal movie, this would be the director's cameo. It's just like a little fun cameo where it's like, oh, okay, it's the director of the movie. And everybody who knows it's the director of the movie can be like, hey, that's fun. Little cameo there. Yes. However, weirdly, that's not it. It weirdly becomes its own little mini subplot as basically the van is careening back and forth as Jackie fights the gang more, and they run into Sammo again. And Sammo cycles faster and faster, going like, "Oh, I'm just too nosy to try and get me." And you're like, so that's time number 2 he crops up, and you're like, well, I guess that'll be the end of Sammo now. Oh no, you'd be wrong, because once again the van is careening back and forth, and Jackie hits the accelerator and is basically fucks up the van in a way that is totally out of control, and it knocks Sammo off his bike. And he flies into a car on the sidewalk. And you're like, okay, this has become its own story now. What is going on? But surely that is the end of Sammo's little mini arc. No, you'd be wrong again. Because after the fight ends and a bunch of the guys are being arrested, Sammo, an angry and now very angry Sammo, comes up to one of the guys and just...
The one that hit him.
the one who hit him, and just starts hitting him with a pole thing. Yeah. And which the police do nothing about, and don't even interact with Sammo at all, just stand holding the guy they've arrested, and while he beats him up, and the guy's like, he's beating me up, why aren't you doing anything? And the cops not only don't do anything, but also don't say anything to either the prisoner or Sammo. So it's really quite weird, and I don't know why he decided to extend his director's cameo into a mini subplot, but it's entertaining that he did.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's the most comical part of the movie, in an action comedy. Because it is, you're kind of watching this cyclist who, he gets punched, and people ask if he's alright. He's like, I should just mind my own business or something. And then the whole time while this is careening, he keeps thinking that they're just tormenting him, but it's just purely a coincidence that, the van keeps hitting him or stuff like that. Yeah. So, I mean, it is fight. And it is, I think, I don't know, I mean, that's the appropriate amount of time. I was going to say, I don't think this really could be our throwback of our side character that has his own movie plot, or, gimmick.
Yeah, that is true. I think this character doesn't need any more airtime than he gets. But it is just quite funny because I do quite like kind of extended riffs. So I do appreciate from that front of this character is around longer than you would assume, because you think it is just literally going to be that one scene where he gets punched in the face. And then he appears a second time, and then a third time, and then a fourth time, and you're like, jeez. I did not expect this.
Yeah.
Also, a thing I like spawning in movies, particularly movies like this. I think I had this on my mind as well, because I recently watched No Time to Die, and Bond films are notorious for product placement.
Yes.
There's some good product placement in this film as well, particularly at the end of the fight sequence with the van, where there is basically a Pepsi van, a Pepsi truck that like tips over and spills out loads of Pepsi, so you can really see the Pepsi.
Yeah, and apparently the way they stock up those vans the Pepsis aren't in cases or anything. It's just a ton of individual Pepsi cans all piled on top of each other.
Yeah, no, that is quite entertaining. Yeah, they're not in like they're not like in trays or crates or anything, like boxes or anything. It's just each individually piled up on each. I don't know, like I've never been to Australia. I don't know if in the 90s that's how Pepsi was transported in Australia. Certainly wasn't like back in the UK or I presume in the US, but you never know. You've never been to Australia either, right?
I have not. So maybe, since you're in New Zealand now, you might find yourself over there at one point. Maybe just ask around. We can do an update episode.
Yeah, we'll bring the podcast back just to update listeners on, like, you know what? In the 90s, Pepsi was transported just like that. Dear. I did notice at the end of the movie that, one of the thank yous at the end of the movie was for Pepsi, so obviously they did have some sort of sponsorship.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. There is other like kind of product placement in the movie as well. There's other things. Like I think there is you see a number of Castrol signs, and that's also like the oil company. That's also one of the things that you see a thank you for at the end of the film. So, like, film partly sponsored by Castrol Oil. Because there is, you definitely see quite a lot of Castrol signs throughout the movie. Like, I wasn't looking for it at first, but I just started to notice them like throughout. I don't know if, again, maybe there were just a lot of Castrol in Melbourne at the time, but again, any Australian listeners, please, if you did live in Melbourne around 1996, tell us all about it. Was Pepsi transported like that? Was there Castrol signs everywhere? We need to know these questions. The answers to these questions.
So after that, he learns where she's being held, Mickey, and decides to go find her. We kind of get a little bit more plot, not really, where we kind of cut back and forth occasionally to the main villain. But yeah, none of that is ever really that important, weirdly enough. It's almost...
Really? Yeah, I mean, we get some, like, meetings and stuff like that of, like, the other kind of main mafia bosses. Again, like, I kind of question, like, are any of these people supposed to be Italian or of Italian heritage? Because it's just, like, the main villain, who's played by Richard Norton, who listeners may know from a number of Cynthia Rothrock movies. And also he starred in a couple of movies with Jackie Chan before this. He starred in one of the Lucky Star movies, and he also co-starred with Jackie in City Hunter, which I know I've seen but can remember nothing about. So yeah, and Richard Norton, very much a white Australian man. And he is playing a character called Giancarlo. And I even put in my notes at one point, is Giancarlo supposed to be Italian? Because he's not, he doesn't even seem like he's of any vague Italian heritage. He's just like, he just has an Italian name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, none of the Italian people in this movie seem very Italian. Even, like, the chef, Baggio, who is played by Australian actor Barry Otto. No, none of the... the only person who seems kind of like they might be of Italian heritage is the actor who plays Romeo, the cop, who his real name is Vince Paletto, which sounds relatively like it could be Italian. But everybody else is just like, because Richard Norton is not trying to put on an accent or anything, he just speaks in his Richard Norton voice, and Barry Otto is doing the kind of Mario Italian voice of like, it's me, the pasta, ha 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 ha, and like, okay. Well, sure, I'm really convinced you're Italian now, Barry.
What's even interesting, I don't know if you noticed this, but during pretty much the whole, so it's supposed to be an Italian mob, as we were talking about, and they're all, they're white Australians.
They are all white Australians, like,
yes, but then
patently white Australians.
Yeah,
I mean, there surely could have been Italian Australian actors out there. Anyway, yeah.
But you'll see the fight sequences, and then there are so many points, I mean, it's fast, but I was like, wait, that guy that was attacking him when they had him like clear full view was a white Australian, and definitely that is not him anymore. Must be one of Jackie's, team members who is Chinese.
That is true. There is a number of times where white Australian men turn into Asian men for a second and then turn back again, because the stunt double work is not kind of hidden in this movie all that well. It's a bit like in the initial sequence that we talked about in which was the very opening scene for me, where the woman is thrown in the pit. Like, there is a shot there where this clear white blonde woman is like, becomes like it's clearly a stunt woman who has like black hair.
Yes.
And you're like, what was? Did they throw a different woman in the pit? No, okay, because we get a close-up again and she's again transformed into a blonde Australian lady. Okay, I guess.
Like, you couldn't, out of all of the set pieces and everything, you couldn't afford a blonde wig in that budget to just like at least try and trick us in some way. Nope.
Apparently the budget didn't stretch for that. They had run out. Maybe they filmed that. Like, films are often filmed out of sequence, so maybe by that stage they had run out of money. They're like, no, we hired the quarry for a day, and we've hired this massive mining truck thing for the day, and so a blonde wig is out of the question now. Although I would say that we are now up to what is probably the best fight sequence in the movie at the construction site. I think they use, Jackie's known for kind of using the kind of environment around them as kind of makeshift weapons and stuff like that. And again, this is done well. We've already talked about that scene with the circular saw that in real life nearly cut something off. But he's rolling around on that kind of saw table. He stuffed some guy into a cement mixer. He catches a guy into another thing, like a kind of pneumatic drill thing that he's bouncing around on, and it's all really done really well. And then there's a sequence where I also love the kind of Scooby-Doo sequence where they're like going in and out of doors, and there's all these maze of doors and who's where, and and it's all done really well, and I think it's probably the highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah, I think I know the cyclist part is kind of the most outwardly comedic, but then combining the action and comedy, yeah, that really, it hits well because especially that door moment, you have even gang members on the same side are pulling the doors open together and then they'll scream. Like everybody gets really shocked
Yeah.
when they see somebody behind the door and then they'll all slam the doors. And yeah, he's just going back and forth and and he's slamming two doors together on somebody and yeah, I agree. It works really well. It makes it funny.
Yeah. And then there's that kind of classic moment where Jackie goes through the one door that is off the side of the building, so then has to like kind of climb back onto the building as he kind of does the kind of whoa, nearly falls off, but then manages to grasp himself back and then turn around and get back into the building through another kind of open gap in that,
Which in the bloopers he almost doesn't. It shows the whole scene where he doesn't have
he
enough
almost
strength
actually
anymore
does fall out of the building, which is, again, it's just like, Jesus, Jackie.
Yeah. But so at this point too, this is where I know because Jackie ends up eventually getting captured. Keisha does, the leader of the demon, she's able to escape while her whole group is killed. And then I know we deviate in our cuts because, and I read up on this afterwards because it feels different, that Diana's hit in the back. She kind of smashes on the floor. And then that's the last I see of her. And then when the kind of gang leader woman breaks out of the building, she lands on a pipe, and then you see her later, she's all bloodied and bruised looking around the corner, and kind of that's it for her. So those are that's the last I see of those characters, which was crazy because Diana's supposed to be, she seems like she was kind of one of the main people. She's the one that started this whole ball rolling, but then she just disappeared for me.
Yeah, so there's not much else of those characters. It is a kind of weird edit, even in the version I watched, where there is an extra scene, because basically, after Diana gets hit, Lakeisha sees that, and she's like, oh, I'll go and get help, and then she runs off, and then she ends up getting captured alongside Mickey and Jackie.
Yep.
And then Diana is just kind of forgotten about. But then you just get this kind of one tacked on scene where, so you kind of, in that scene, you're kind of not sure what happened to Diana, because you kind of assume she would be captured too, but then, so you're not quite sure how she escaped. Like, at least with the demon lady, you know how she escaped. Because she jumps out and then she ends up it was, again, all the most painful moments of this movie seem to happen to the woman. It seems like she breaks her ribs over this pole, and then she kind of runs away, and then there is a sequence that you didn't get, where she talks to basically Romeo. Goes to the hospital and talks to the demon lady and kind of tells them where they are, and then he talks to Diana as well, and then it's just really short conversation. And even sticking to your point about Diana mainly caring about the fame and stuff like that, she's she says to Romeo hey, remember, it's my story. And then Romeo kind of smiles, and then they go off. And it's kind of weird as well, because there's this music sting in that sequence where Romeo talks to Diana that's kind of the classic kind of bow, 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 kind of romantic, kind of implying kind of some sort of sexual connection or something, or some sort of romantic connection, and you're like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, there's been no previous, like, have Romeo and Diana really even interacted that much in the movie? Like, I don't know. It's weird. And then, like, and when she says, like, I remember it's my story, she does it in this flirty way, and then Romeo kind of gives her this kind of, like, cheeky smile, and it's like, hang on, wait, are they implying that there's some sort of romance? Really? Like, again, where is this potential romance come from? Is it, am I wrong? Is it, but it's done in this weird flirty way that you're just like, yeah, this makes no sense to the previous things that have happened in the movie.
Well, and then too, isn't Romeo, because Romeo has the 2 kids, isn't he married too?
I don't know. At this stage, I was like, yeah, I assumed he was married, but then I was like, oh, is he actually a single father? Like, because it's never actually stated out loud, like, what his status is. He just has 2 kids.
Yeah, and then there's the scene, which is, so as we mentioned before, it turns out that his kids have the tape, the incriminating tape, that then they're just watching. And so I thought, you see kind of a woman in the background, I thought maybe it was Romeo's wife, or maybe it was like the babysitter, the maid, I don't know who. But she's in the room with them and then leaves. I'm like, wait a minute, this lady was just letting these kids watch this tape. And they've been watching it for some time of like, a whole, drug deal gone wrong.
Yeah. It was the 90s. It was a different time.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's our kind of 2 seconds of plot that we get. And then, back to kind of more action as we cut to the villain's lair. And I suppose the other kind of 2 seconds of plot that we get is, basically Jackie tries to fool Giancarlo into thinking that he knows where the tape is, which he doesn't, and he pretends to phone. Well, he doesn't pretend to phone, he does actually call Romeo, but then Romeo isn't at the house because Romeo has now discovered that his kids have had the tape all along and has run off to the police station, so Romeo's not at the house. And then Jackie is like, does that classic, like, where, somebody's not on the other end of the phone, so has like a one-sided conversation where somebody pretends that the other person is, and he's like, oh yeah, oh, I'll come, where's the address? Oh no, you want me to come there? Okay, I'll come there. Pretending there is somebody on the line. But because Giancarlo has a second line, yes, this is, again, if you are under the age of 30 and listening to this podcast, this is like a series of home phones. Home phones were kind of things that were mounted in some way, either in a kind of cradle, like just on a desk, or sometimes they were wall mounted. But this is what we had before mobile phones took off in a big way. And sometimes people could have a second line where they could listen in on the first line. If they
That's
wanted.
crazy.
It's mad times, retro times. But that is what is happening in this film. A little glimpse into the world before smartphones and mobile phones and stuff.
How do you even text somebody on those phones?
Nope. You just phone people. And back in those days, you couldn't use those phones if somebody was using the internet, because because the internet used to go through phone lines and it would disturb those phones, and you would have to tell the person who was on the internet to get off the internet so you could make a phone call. It was very complicated. Life was more complicated back in our childhood. That's all I'm saying.
It would take 3 or 4 minutes just for a picture to load up.
It'd take forever, man. Yeah. So
we get into
that's where we're at. And then we get into the next fight where, fight in quotation marks, because Giancarlo has basically a man, like Jackie has ropes attached to both his arms and both his legs, and a man at the end of each rope, so controlling all 4 of his limbs. So Giancarlo is like, punch me, and then obviously every time Jackie tries to punch him, it is pulled back by the man holding the rope, or every time he throws a kick is the same thing. And then Giancarlo is like beating him up, but then Jackie, being Jackie, finds inventive ways to defeat this process and beat Giancarlo up for a second, even though, eventually Giancarlo's men managed to get control of him again. Oh, it is quite fun where he wraps the rope around Giancarlo's neck, and Giancarlo, when the guy goes to pull the rope, he's like, no. And then, like, Jackie pulls him in and starts punching him in the face, and he's like, no, go. Like, it's this push-pull thing. So that's quite funny.
Yeah, it is. And what I appreciate is it kind of, because one of the things about action movies that I always think about is you kind of have the big bad villain at the end who's supposed to be a viable match for the hero or whatever. But then you think, well, I mean, it's never really that fair of a fight, because in most of these movies, the hero's been, beaten and all this throughout the whole thing. So then by the time they face the main villain, they're already weakened. And this one takes it to that extreme where it's like, okay, well, not only am I going to fight you, but I'm also going to make it basically so you can't hit me at all. So there's like no fairness in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to show what a real prick Giancarlo is, he has no sense of honor at all. And it's quite funny as well, because like some of these action films that we've covered, like, you can kind of tell that the villain is like no real match for the hero at all. And at least in this case, I think because like Richard Norton is a martial artist and, looks quite, he's much bigger than, Jackie in terms of like height and stuff like that. Or, he's certainly a bit bigger anyway. And looks quite imposing. He does cut a bit more of a bit more of an imposing figure, as a villain than some of the villains we've maybe covered. So it does seem like more of a match, even if it was like more of a kind of straight one-on-one. Yeah.
So he says that he's going to tells them, I don't even care about the tape anymore. Take them to
the thing that has been driving the plot the whole of the movie. he no longer cares about. The one thing that has been tenuously driving the plot, we just like throwing out now.
Well, what's crazy too before we kind of get into this final sequence, the cops, they now have this evidence, and yet it's still not enough, apparently. It's like it's not enough evidence to actually prosecute or
that is a
go
weird
on the
thing.
grounds.
Like, you'd think they would come with a warrant and stuff and be like, we're arresting you now because we have video evidence of a drug deal going down. Like,
and you kill people.
Yes, and you like killing a guy. So you're now under arrest. But no, they're just like, oh no, we can't do anything. We're like, really?
So again, anybody in Australia listening, was that in the 90s, apparently if you were incriminated on video evidence, could you still not be touched by the arm of the law?
I mean, I don't really know who we're asking there. Are we asking like Australian drug dealers or like any passing Australian drug dealers that happen to listen to our podcast?
The large demographic of Australian drug dealers that listen to this podcast.
That is the main source of listenership for this show. Oh dear. Yeah. But apparently that is the case. You need to see them actually in the act, in person. It's that thing of like, you know, you have to see things in front of your face. Just like the demon leader had to see the crowd to stop the guy throwing grenades at them. You have to see things in front of your face in this reality.
Yes. So, Giancarlo says to take them out to the guest house, which we now know is throw them in the quarry and then bury them with the mining vehicle, which it makes a really big ditch for just, you know, a couple bodies, especially. That's one thing we didn't mention in the very first one.
Oh, that is true. They dig this like massive hole that is like the kind of hole that is like deep enough that you're like thinking, are they dumping like nuclear waste or something? Because like you because it seems ludicrous for anything else. But yes. And you just think that's going to take hours to like fill up, and for just one person, like what's going on here? It does, but again, I guess it's one of those things of like it looks more dramatic on film or whatever, and when you're watching it, you know, you don't maybe really question it, you know, like on first watch or whatever. It's only when you're detailing it for a podcast that you're like, why the hell would they even do that? That seems so weird.
Yeah. So they take Mickey, Lakeisha, and Jackie all in kind of separate cars, and they're going to go and bury them. And basically, so Jackie, who is supposed to be unconscious, he's not really, he's faking it, to which he's able to then beat up the guys he's in the car with and kind of escape, which then the mining vehicle starts to then try and roll over the car, and which it's able to, and he's able to kind of escape right before it rolls right over it, because it is this huge, massive vehicle that can, and he's able to kind of work his magic and go up the tire, because doing, what is it from, the Charlie Chaplin movie, Modern
Times.
Modern Times, where it's almost like the gears thing. I know, he's done it a couple times now, but he does that with a tire.
Yeah.
Where he like starts to go up the tire and then, shimmies up the vehicle to get control of it.
Yeah. And, then he does. It's a pretty cool stunt. And again, you see the kind of outtakes of that where like Jackie's like nearly flattened and stuff, but
yes.
Again, because you know, we can only doff our caps to Jackie Chan and all the amazing death-defying things he has done through his career. But then, basically, we're basically at the end of the movie. We just need to wrap up by saying that like Jackie does get control of the vehicle. And then he gate crashes through like the mansion house. First of all, breaking through the wall of the mansion house, the kind of gated wall of the mansion house. And I think like there's some funny beats because the first funny thing is when he breaks through the wall, the first person to spot him is like a random henchman who apparently isn't allowed to pee in Giancarlo's house because he's taking a leak behind a tree for some reason. He's not allowed to go away from his post, maybe that's what it is. And then he kind of looks over his shoulder, and that's like a kind of fun comical beat. And I also thought it was fun that when he is like flattening everything in his wake before he flattens the actual mansion house itself, he flattens like a few cars, and the first two cars he flattens don't explode. No. But then the next couple of cars he flattens do explode. Yes. So we're not sure why, but like it's a bit like there's like wooden parts of this house that just randomly explode, and you're like, what was Why?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. Seeing all these explosions is fun. Seeing a big, massive truck ram raid its way through a kind of mansion house, again, fun. But you know, questioning a little bit, like, what is actually making these explosions go off?
Yes. Well, and so right before that too, we have another little plot thing where it's the police actually show up, go up to the gate, and Giancarlo pulls a gun on them and says, "I could shoot you both right now." And they still are like, "Oh, well, we can't do anything." They just basically turn around to leave until they see Jackie with the truck. Like, they have all this evidence. They get a gun pulled on them and still can't do anything.
Yes. And that is one of those things that I did, in terms of like the kind of errors in the movie, you always have these kind of things on IMDb and stuff, errors in movies and stuff, much of which are quite tiresome, and you're like, yeah, come on, get over it, you're watching an action movie, whatever. But, that is kind of one of the funnier ones of like, gun laws in Australia are quite restrictive. They're quite strict, and they don't have any kind of trespass law like that, where you can like shoot people on your own property, or if you think your property needs defended in some way. There's no law like that in Australia, so it's just one of those complete bullshit movie things.
But what's interesting, so. Yeah, kind of, I guess, getting to the end, what's interesting about this movie is that it doesn't have like the final kind of fight sequence. It's more, I mean, that's basically the end is Jackie rolling through, just destroying this whole house, and then all the criminals running out, the cocaine gets spread all over the ground. But that's basically, that's it in terms of, the climax, which you would normally expect, especially from a martial arts movie. You'd have that final fight, but
yeah, it is a bit anticlimactic. Like, it is a little bit of a weird ending, because you do think that after rolling through his house, there would be like a final fight between Giancarlo and Jackie, particularly because, like I say, Giancarlo is played by Richard Norton, who's been in a bunch of martial art movies and is a trained martial artist, and you'd just think there'd be like a final confrontation between them of this is round 2 where, the gloves are really off and it's really mano a mano this time. That makes sense, and to not get that, you do feel kind of robbed a little bit of oh. Yeah.
Because it does make it seem like at certain points throughout the movie that Giancarlo is a good martial artist. He has points where he does jump kicks or stuff like that. And
he is presented as as a tough badass kind of villain, that kind of rules by fear, that the fact he got to the top of the mob or whatever, and everybody listens to him because he can beat everybody up, basically. That seems like he's ruling by intimidation. So that's how it's presented. So, you would have thought that there would have been one last fight, even if it was a relatively brief fight, even if it was Giancarlo's not quite as hard when, he's not got men, tying me to ropes. Even if it was like that, even if it was a relatively short fight that was Giancarlo got the upper hand for just a second, but then Jackie takes over, it would have been fine. But yeah, it does feel weird that we don't get that. We don't get that kind of final fight. We basically just get Jackie rolls through the house, everything explodes, then the police come and mop it up and arrest a bunch of people, and then the film just kind of ends.
Yeah, they say, "Oh, we didn't see anything. It was just it was basically just a gang battle," so then Jackie doesn't have to be charged or something, or all of them. And then I know for mine, and this is I think where we kind of had differing cuts again, is that It's like Jackie comes off the mining vehicle. There's a little brief moment between him and Romeo, and then he goes up back from a long shot. He climbs back up the mining vehicle to Mickey and Lakeisha, who are still up there. And then it very quickly, without fading or anything, it goes right into the bloopers. So it throws you off, where it takes you a second to realize, oh, the movie ended. Because,
the version I watched ends slightly differently, not that differently, and it does feel kind of tacked on because, like, it is like the movie has ended, but it's not quite sure what note to kind of leave it on, because it's like everybody's kind of packing up and going home, but they're like, oh no, we just have to have one last thing to kind of end on. So we get this kind of shot of like the camera kind of panning out as if it's like the end of the movie, but then we don't really properly see like kind of Jackie and Romeo, but we just get this little bit of dialogue between Jackie and Romeo where Romeo is like, we got here as soon as we could, and then like Jackie kind of just like shrugs as if to say, yeah, right, whatever, and then he's like, honest, and then we cut to credits and we cut to the bloopers or whatever. So again, even the end that I get feels kind of just like we've run out of things to say. You go home.
But yeah, even by that point, it seems like, even if they had a moment of just him and Mickey or somebody, of them hugging or something like that, some way to kind of at least have a little cap or have some, kind of closure, it would have made more sense.
Yeah, a little bit. That's a bit better than that. He doesn't need to. You don't have to have like a long kind of postscript, but like something that just feels like a resolution. It's just like the ending of Super Cop is quite abrupt, but it does still feel like a proper ending when they're in the top of the train and they're kind of bantering about where the money's going to go, like Hong Kong or China or whatever, and then it ends. It's a very brief scene, but at least it's feels like a proper ending.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Mr. Nice Guy in the book. That is our penultimate episode in the book. Is there any last thing you want to say on Mr. Nice Guy?
I don't know. As I've stated before, I kind of have a special place in my heart for Jackie Chan. Both kind of as a person, I know he's also a big Buster Keaton fan, which I am as well. And so, I like his stuff. I'll normally sit through it. And the movie is fun for the action scenes. I'll give it that, but it is, in terms of like watching it for a story or anything, it just kind of is a blur. If I wasn't writing down notes, as I kind of already mentioned, I don't think, and even with the notes, it was kind of trying to figure out what happened next still, because most of the stuff doesn't really, any sort of plot stuff doesn't really matter in this movie.
There's not a lot of plot. There's very little characterization. We don't really learn to love these characters or get to know these characters at all, really. And it's the acting varies. Is of variable quality. A lot of actors. No, a lot of acting in the movie, not so great. But the fight action sequences are good. Jackie's charming as always. So it's still highly watchable. Like most Jackie Chan films, well, certainly a lot of Jackie Chan films are, particularly of this era. I know this is kind of slightly outside of what's seen as his kind of golden era. This is, and I'd certainly place it above some of his Hollywood productions, like the Tuxedo or the Spy Next Door or things like that. Because it does have these stunt sequences, it does have these action sequences, and the movie is kind of worth it for, like, I mean, the construction scene fight sequence alone is probably worth the price of admission. And there's a bunch of other great bits, like the jump onto the scaffolding, like the runaway carriage, like the kind of escalator bit. There's good stuff in here, but it's all Jackie stuff. It's all stunt stuff. If you're looking for any sort of coherent story or any sort of like interesting, memorable characters, then this is probably a Jackie Chan effort you can skip over.
Yeah.
But then it just leaves me to say one last time, where can people find you on the internet, Craig?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Craig Dram, Draheim. And I also am not one half, I am 1/3 of the Bloodhound Picks podcast, where we're actually changing our format slightly by the time this rolls around. But before that point, we were focusing on kind of independent and obscure older horror movies and kind of highlighting those, and then also looking at members or people within the horror community, from journalists to filmmakers and every variation between, and highlighting them and what it's like working in the industry, especially during this pandemic. But if you want to follow that, it's Bloodhound Picks, PIX, and we will be kind of changing our format pretty drastically soon to switch to try new ventures. But if you want to look up there.
Okay, well, I'm interested to see what those new ventures are. That's all for this time. If you want to check us out, you can you can talk to us on Twitter at 90s Action. You can find the podcast in most places you can find good podcasts. I know we're kind of heading towards the end of this show, but if you did still want to support the show, you can always rate, review, and subscribe to it. We might have special episodes beyond the end of the show. We're not sure at the moment. Everything's kind of up in the air. We are on indefinite hiatus after we do our 3 Ninjas episode in February. But yeah. That's all for now. But if you, like I say, if you do still want to support, and maybe if we get like a ton of 5-star reviews, maybe we'll be forced to keep going. So
yes.
You could turn it around, guys. You could turn it around by just giving us a flurry of 5-star reviews.
I would say make sure to keep following us, because I don't know, maybe I know we've talked about between us finding times to do like special event type thing, or special annual segments or stuff like that.
Yeah. So keep subscribed, because we are thinking of, like, whenever we both, Craig and I both have time, maybe we'll cover, some of our favorites, in the future, or do little special events, or if, we can track down interviews again, like, whatever it might be, we might do the odd special episode. It might only be like a couple a year or something like that, but yeah, keep subscribed, because you never know what's going to happen. But I will now bring this episode fully to a close. Thanks again for listening, and join us again next time in our final episode, wherein I will be discussing the movie 3 Ninjas. So look forward to that one. But until then, though, see ya.